lived in,
One of my favorite districts.
okay, very good, very good.
It's right next to Vicksburg. It is one of my favorites.
Oh, I'm glad that you said that. I'm glad that you said that. We were just there for, well, I don't want to take my words. I've lived most of my life in West Jackson, and there is a glaring environmental justice issue that affects this side of the Pearl River. When heavy rains hit the area, we can almost guarantee that communities in West Jackson will experience flooding, severe flooding. That's because the levee does not protect these communities in my district, who are hit hardest as a result. Not only does the current levee system leave large parts of Jackson adjacent to the Pearl River unprotected from floods, but the Corps' 1960s levee design has adversely impacted minority areas in the city of Jackson. There's a choke point in the current levee system that actually increases flood levels, and neighborhoods in that area experience more flood impacts as a result of the current levee system. This has been an historical problem for the Black community for many years. I'm talking Dudeville, Battlefield Park, Washington Addition, Hemingway Circle, Western Plaza Subdivision, Pecan Tree Neighborhood, Jane Avenue Neighborhood, and all of the areas in between. And several of those residents from those communities are actually here today. After the severe 2020 flood that many of you mentioned already, my colleagues in the legislature and I held 2 community meetings to gather data from the neighbors about those impacts. We heard story after story from homeowners, pastors, and other concerned citizens about how they were up to here with the lack of infrastructure and maintenance. They wanted answers, and they wanted them right now. They wanted them even today. They told us how high the water got, how they were scared, how they felt like prisoners in their own homes. They cannot afford to move, and the insurance premiums increase after every claim. In addition, motorists could not travel the streets or under viaducts. Our scholars could not attend school, and electeds, we were doing the very best that we could to scout sandbags, to take to our vulnerable members like the elderly and make sure that they had bottled water. Of course, the flooding impacts water insecurity, economic development, and public health. I believe the locally proposed flood control plan solves these problems by mitigating those impacts and correcting the design flaw. The plan provides protection for minority neighborhoods that haven't been protected for decades. All citizens of Jackson need safe water and flood protection so that no one is faced with the traumatic decision of staying or going. I would also like to read a statement from Ted Hennepin, who is our federally appointed third-party Jackson Water System Administrator, and he states that the ITPM supports the Channel Improvements Plan because it preserves the broadest options for Jackson's long-term drinking water needs. With a new weir, a new water intake structure could be located anywhere along the river from the current location downstream to the new weir. Having more options will allow optimization of siting the plant to provide significant community benefits, elimination of flood risk to plant facilities, and target the best hydraulic location for pumping water throughout the system without limitations created by the location of the existing weir. So the current levee protects Rankin County. We believe that the proposed project provides relief, protection, opportunity, and extends benefits to minority and low-income households in Jackson. It's a win-win for District 68, and we stand in support of it. We thank the Corps and the Biden administration for all of their efforts to help the city of Jackson, and we look forward to progress. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if I could have this. Yeah, thank you. Quick thing. So, Representative Summers, thank you for your testimony there. EJ is something very important we're looking at. It's one of the initiatives that we have been show me on the map some of the areas that are interested in you. We make sure we capture that and we're not missing anything. All right, thank you. It's good with the effort. Thank you. Sir?
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Ricky McMahon. I have the honor of serving as President and CEO of Jackson's official destination marketing organization. We are a tourism guy actually in Jackson. Jackson's economy is benefited by a strong tourism environment. A lot of people don't understand that, but I'll just give you some examples. Last year we did $67 million in tourism business, generating $115 million of economic output. 48,000 Jacksonians make their living in the tourism community. And that tourism business is the fourth largest employer in the state. Jackson Tourism generated $19.4 million in tax revenue, which impacted each Jacksonian's household by about $313 on an annual basis. That tourism offset those property taxes by $2.8 million. Tourism is big business for Jackson. Tourism is big business for the state of Mississippi. A dependable water system that eliminates flooding will help attract tourism assets, developers, including hotels, restaurants, historical and cultural attractions, and special events. All of these result in an enhanced economy. Those 40,000 Jacksonians that make their living in the tourism industry, many of them are low to middle income citizens. If you think about how the impact of what happened with our flooding and our water, and how that negatively impacts my positive marketing messages that go across the United States, across the world, and how we have to combat what wonderful marketing assets we have, the resilient people that have, restaurateurs that know how to deal with water illnesses. But when you have that water issues compounded with flooding, it just drastically impacted our ability to be a strong economic contributor for not only the city, not only the state, because we have a special story. If it can happen in Jackson, Mississippi, if it can happen in Mississippi, just think about the things that happened so negatively in the civil rights movement in Mississippi, in Jackson. We are the cradle of the civil rights movement. Because of the things that we were able to do in Jackson, because of the things we were able to do in the city, including changing our flag just a couple of years ago, we are the model for this country. We are the conscience for this country. If it can happen in Jackson, Mississippi, if it can happen in the state of Mississippi, we can continue to impact positively this nation and the world. Thank you.
I don't have a statement to make, but I have a question. My first question is, all the money that will be used in the project, to complete the project, is it all federal money?
So a portion of it will be federal money. Again, we haven't determined exactly what the project is. Determining what the NED plan is, no, the experts are really wrong. The NED plan sets what the federal government will pay for the projects, essentially. And then the NED becomes like kind of a cost share discussion as to how the final cost will be broken down in the project.
Yeah, that's all true. Simply stated, there's $220 million that were allocated by the bipartisan infrastructure law for a project we haven't determined yet. Once we determine that, we will apply the law of cost sharing. So how much that cost sharing depends upon the benefits produced for flood risk management. That's the simplest way to say that. It will require a non-federal sponsor.
My second question is, will private landowners be required to contribute to the cost of the project in any way whatsoever? That includes increased real estate taxes.
I can't answer that question. I think that question is probably more for who the sponsor is and how they would pay for their share. Right? We, the federal government, would not be exercising a tax of any sort.
So there's money coming in, the sponsors, other than you all, that's having to finance the project.
So that has not been decided. Let me give you an example of how it works nationwide, anywhere we are. So if we have a flood control project or any kind of project in Core Village, federal law dictates how much a non-federal sponsor has to cost share. That non-federal interest is typically a public entity. It could be a state, it could be a local government. And they determine how they use their monies that are either in their capital budget or other means to pay for those funds. That's part of their public process. So I can't provide visibility on that. I think that's part of the discussion here. Who would the sponsor be for the project that gets recommended, and how are they in that piece? That's definitely visibility we would want to provide here through this process.
And my final question, I'd like to address the elephant in the room that's not on the top of this, and that's eminent domain. What process do you have in place to make sure that the balance plan of eminent domain and that there's only reasonable and necessary taking of private property, as well as some governmental oversight on the process?
So can I ask another question? Are you worried about a particular type of eminent domain, like individual houses?
No, taking a private property, taking a land.
Okay, so it depends on the project. I'm going to let the Colonel talk about our real estate process.
I can get back to you, sir, on the actual real estate process, but I can tell you, eminent domain is not step one, ever. So we would be working closely with the non-federal sponsor for acquisition of lands. Federal law governs how that process works. It is a long run, but we can link in with the right folks who can answer questions on that.
And then just one follow-up on that. So we talked about non-structural and potentially buyouts, and there was a question about this at the end of last session. In terms of any buyouts that we're able to somehow offer, they would be voluntary only. We would never do eminent domain to have people move off their property. My boss is a Native American, and he feels particularly strong about that point when it comes to relocating communities, right? So I need to be honest there. But when it comes to the line alignment for levees, there's a lot more steps we can make that connection happen. But eminent domain is not going proposition.
But African Americans feel stronger about that also.
Of course, that's why I mentioned it.
Good evening. My name is Tamika Jenkins. I am the Executive Director for Economic Development here in Hinds County. I came to Hinds County last June, and I came just in time to see the impact of flooding in this area. It's way past time for this project to come to action, so residents don't have to worry about water in their homes or in their businesses. And businesses don't have interruptions when they are supporting the economy here in Hinds County. I have 3 quick points I want to make to explain my perspective of why the Economic Development Organization in Hinds County is in support of this flood control project. The first one is attraction and retention. Before a company comes and they want to expand to Hinds County, they're looking at us on the news, they're doing their research online, and they're pretty much doing their vetting before I ever even get a phone call or an email. And if we have national news about how this area is flooding, companies are not going to want to come here. And as far as the retention aspect, this kind of goes into my point number 2, the water. So last fall when the area flooded, it did and they also changed an interstate. Now, our river is right here in one location. I'm sure we can get some funding and get the community and get the community on one page to fix this flooding project. If they can reroute the interstate and a river, surely we can do something to control this flood. And now that they've done that, they have a beautiful residential and commercial development along a kind of a river in downtown Oklahoma City. You can take the bus there, you can spend all day there, just chilling out. And also, you know, you have Memphis, which is on the big river, the Mississippi River. They have a walk that's, you know, way above the floodplain. But, you know, there are opportunities that, you know, we can do to mitigate this risk. And the Economic Development Organization is 100% in support of this project and whatever they can do to help move things along. Thank you.
So, let me give me 1 second, Tom, and thank you for the example of Oklahoma City. For others that are interested, about 2 weeks ago, I was up in Fargo, North Dakota, and there's a project, the Fargo-Moorhead Diversion Project, where they're diverting the Red River to the north. And it's a phenomenal story of how the community a flooding community came together in order to make a project like that happen. So, ma'am, thank you for your testimony. If you want to read that, I'm sure you can Google the Fargo-Moorhead Flood Risk Management Project. Thanks.
Good evening. I am C.J. Rhodes, a resident of Jackson and Hinds County, Mississippi. Also the pastor of Mount Helen Baptist Church, which is a church in downtown Jackson's historic Ferry Street Historic District. I'm also plugged to the Vicksburg area, interim director of the Early Edwards Williams Honors Program at Alcorn State University, where we help to train students in environmental justice and civil rights advocacy. The past few years have amplified and exacerbated Jackson's water insecurity, flooding, and economic development issues. Back in 2020, though, my northeast Jackson home wasn't affected during the flood, just about a mile down the road. Many of my friends and church members were flooded, and of course several other residents and businesses were flooded downtown in the areas near the I-55 I-20 stack. I believe that the proposed flood control plan helps to resolve all three of these issues. This particular plan, as has been noted earlier, impacts and helps to protect largely Black and economically disadvantaged neighborhoods in Jackson in those flood areas. Flooding in those city areas is especially tough for citizens who can't afford to relocate flood risk areas. Living in Northeast Jackson, there are those who are inconvenienced by flooding, can't maybe relocate sadly out of Jackson. But when you have very, very limited income, it is hard to do that. As a pastor, our church has provided pastoral care, charitable aid, and short-term relief to flood victims displaced in those times. And of course, our broader water security issues have impacted members and non-members alike that we service. Really since the 1980s, but at higher speed since about 20 years ago, Jackson suffered from years of investment and population decline, making imaginative and urgent changes necessary, not only to this whole issue of flooding and water security, but what kind of city we want, what kind of county we want to attract and retain citizens. And particularly as a millennial, may not be as young as the person you were speaking to, Colonel, but I am 41 and relatively young still. Many of us look to places like Memphis and other places that have a lot of other recreational opportunities, and young people and young families, particularly the young people who attend our local colleges and universities, who we want to keep in Jackson, keep in Hinds County, we prefer more opportunities for recreation, and we think this would afford them this as well. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Leah Campbell. I'm here tonight representing Mississippi for a Green New Deal. We are an alliance of over 40 grassroots organizations across Mississippi, including groups of frontline working class folks in Jackson who are impacted by environmental justice issues, including Pearl River flooding, and they are concerned for themselves, their families, their communities, and their well-being. So I'm here tonight to represent those concerns, and in particular concerns around the proposed One Lake project alternative. Based on our research and our engagement in this process, we are deeply opposed to the One Lake project alternative. One Lake is a private real estate development scheme masquerading as a flood control project that will only put more people and property in harm's way. The Army Corps rejected One Lake years ago and should reject it today. One Lake construction will expose local communities to toxic contamination by disturbing 8 dangerous waste sites and further exacerbate the city's water crisis. There is no plan to protect the public health, with only $8 million set aside for cleanup. Jackson residents already face toxic lead levels in the water system, and we all know the current water treatment system is fragile. The JH Fuel water treatment plant, which supplies 30% of City of Jackson's drinking water and operated during the recent water crises, would not be able to operate during construction on One Lake because of dredging-induced water quality problems, forcing Jackson to somehow find and pay for another temporary water supply for over 3 years. Jackson's residents deserve a solution that will not further threaten their access to clean drinking water. One Lake will not alleviate the rain-induced flash flooding that already impacts neighborhoods along the Pearl River's 8 tributaries that flow through Jackson, but instead will make flash flooding worse by permanently elevating parts of these creeks and creating new backflooding problems in other areas. We've been canvassing in the Eubanestown and Lynch Creek neighborhoods to hear residents' concerns. These are low-income, working-class folks who can't afford increases in insurance, can't afford threats to access to their roads and transportation, and cannot afford the neighborhood infrastructure threats that the One Lake project would propose. Finally, One Lake will likely raise Mississippians' property taxes. Passed in 2017 state legislative session, House Bill 1585 gives the local levee board a blank check to raise property taxes for owners they determine are, quote-unquote, directly or indirectly benefited by the project. Working people and businesses in Jackson should not foot the bill for a flood control project. Instead of a destructive One Lake project, Jackson residents and businesses deserve effective, sustainable flood relief solutions that benefit all people, not just those who stand to gain financially from the One Lake project. The Corps should prioritize the more effective, less costly options that truly address flooding concerns, include improvements to existing levees, elevating homes and buildings, or offering voluntary buyouts for properties with a history of flooding problems. Thank you.